You are about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating talk radio. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
Doctor, tell me true. What's a heart like mine supposed to do? Doctor, will it be okay? You got the kind of stuff that makes my day.
Welcome back to the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So I am seeing patient after patient with horrific sunburns. I mean, they are baking and frying and charring in the sun. Not good. UV rays like UVB can burn, B for burn the skin, causing redness, discomfort, peeling. I'm seeing blistering. I'm seeing discoloration. And these burns could be very devastating. Mild sunburns, you get a mild sunburn, you could use a cool compress on it, some anti-inflammatories, fluids, aloe vera. But I wouldn't use aloe vera products. I know aloe vera plants have been very popular. We're just recommending let a medical provider look at it and put as little on it as possible, cool compresses. But sometimes we will use some skin moisturizers. But in severe cases, these really bad sunburns can cause blistering, severe pain, dehydration, infection, headache, nausea, fever, to name a few. And what people forget is a sunburn is hurting your skin the same process as scalding water. A burn is a burn. So some of these severe burns need, prompt medical attention. Burn care units may sometimes need to give you IV fluids or pain control. Sometimes they have to give you steroids. Now, interestingly, sometimes you're sitting out there going, wait a second, I use sunblock. I wasn't outside longer than anybody else. Why did I fry? Well, it could also be your medication. Your medication could be causing sun sensitivity reactions or severe burns. So if you're on an antibiotic or if you're on an antifungal for your toenail fungus, you might want to avoid being out in the sun. You might want to opt for the shade. If you're taking antihistamines for allergies, if you're on a statin to control your cholesterol, if you're on a diuretic, a water pill, if you're taking birth control, that could cause you to have a severe sun sensitivity reaction. If you're taking anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen, if you're taking certain diabetic medications like sulfonylureas, like glipizide, glyburide, if you're taking retinoids for your skin, that could be an issue. So before you go out into the sun, and I know a lot of us are going to kind of try to enjoy the last few weeks of summer here, consult your medical provider to see if maybe your medications could cause sun sensitivity reactions. And of course, use, hats, sunglasses, sunscreen, protect your lips with sun-blocked lip balm. Cover your skin with loose clothing. I love those water shirts because they're light. They're not sticky. They're a soft material, but they cover the sun. But a question I keep getting from people is, can I use my expired sunscreen? We've all done it, where we go to Target or Walmart and we buy the twin pack or multiple tubes because they're cheaper and they're on sale. And then we don't use the whole thing, so they sit in our cupboard till next year. Then you grab them, and then you find that it's pretty expired. Some of us have sunscreen like 3 years old. The FDA recommends no, throw the sucker out. If you use sunscreen, it might not work well, but even worse is there could be carcinogen buildup. Some of the chemicals that build up in it could be carcinogenic. A study from Chemical Research and Toxicology found that the octocrylene in many sunscreen and anti-aging products could degrade into benzophenone. Benzophenone is a known carcinogen. It's a mutagen, so it can mutate cells and it can disrupt your endocrine system. So they evaluated multiple products for their octocrylene and the benzophenone components, and they found that our work unambiguously establishes that octocrylene does undergo a slow retroaldol condensation reaction that gives rise to benzophenone. This process occurred in all commercial sunscreens tested that contain octocrylene, resulting in the concomitant increase of the benzophenone concentration upon aging the product. Now, another thing too is your sunscreen, where are you storing it? If it's stored in the heater improperly, not only will it lose effectiveness, but now you're getting chemical reactions from the chemicals in there. Do you really want to put unstable chemicals on your skin? A lot of us have our sunscreen in the trunk of our car from the last camping trip. Throw that out. That's not good. It might not work. It's pretty disgusting. So you got to check the smell, check for odor. Just to kind of review, you got sunscreens and sunblocks. Sunscreens absorb the UV rays. Sunblocks, though, disperse them, kind of providing a shield. So inorganic compounds in sunblocks like titanium dioxide or zinc oxide will scatter the UV rays, yet the organic compounds like PABA or oxybenzone will attempt to absorb them and mitigate so they can't damage the skin. I prefer the block. I don't want anybody bringing the UV rays in the skin. I just prefer the zinc oxide, the block. Now, UV rays penetrate deeply into the epidermis and dermis. How you remember UVA versus UVB is UVA goes all the way and they can age you, causing the wrinkling of the skin and cancer. UVB burns. They're shorter waves. They affect the epidermis, so they might not age you, but they could also cause skin cancer. Both can cause skin cancer. And so SPF is your sun protection factor. The higher the SPF, the less sun photons can enter your skin and cause damage. SPF is more about the UVB rays. So sometimes you're not getting UVA rays blocked. And it looks at how long it takes you to burn. So if it takes you 10 minutes to burn and you get 30 minutes sunblock, you multiply the 30 by the 10, and that sunblock is supposed to allow you to not burn for 300 minutes. We don't really think that's the case. You need to reapply it. If you sweat it off or swim, you need to reapply it. But yeah, the higher the SPF, the more protection, but it's not linear. An SPF of 15 blocks 93% of UVB rays, but an SPF of 50 blocks 97%, so a 4% increase. SPF of 50 blocks 98% of UVB rays. So you are getting more protection, but it's not like double or triple or quadruple. So throw out your expired sunscreen. I prefer sunblock over sunscreen, but ensure you're protecting your skin so you don't get melanoma. And ask your medical provider if your medicines are going to cause you to cause severe burns. And if you do get a severe burn, seek medical attention immediately. 1-877-DOC.
This is an urgent announcement for anyone that's $10,000 or more in debt. Before you make another minimum payment, you need to know there are special programs that can completely free you of your debt. Total Financial Freedom can help you become debt-free in months instead of years. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and timeshares. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020 for a free consultation. For 16 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. You can feel confident when calling because Total Financial Freedom is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Battling for years and years stuck in the endless cycle of minimum payments could take decades. You have the right to get your debt resolved and substantially reduce your monthly payments. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020. That's 800-878-6020. 800-878-6020.
Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Increase fuel economy up to 7.9% with Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme. The solution to maximize your engine's performance and fuel economy. Whether you're driving a sports car or a daily commuter, Gasoline Extreme is specially formulated with PEA to deep clean. Don't settle for an average driving experience. Upgrade to Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme and go further on each tank. Order now on Amazon or HotShotSecret.com. Hot Shot Secret. Powered by science.
And we're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1877 Dr. Dahlia, 1877 DOCDALI. So one concern people have is when we're looking at the Democratic Socialists of America, are they going to take over all the big major cities and then later get government appointments or be elected into major government positions? And then will this country have to be dealing with not only extreme socialist views, but communistic views, anti-Semitic legislation, and just absolute chaos? And so this article really caught my eye because this was really interesting. And what it did is it looked at New York City's rent freeze and what Zohran Mamdani did. He didn't really have a difficult pathway because there was already existing rent stabilization systems. But what makes this article interesting from money.com is they looked at if other mayors want to do exactly what Zohran Mamdani is doing. Do they want to do a rent freeze? And if people love their rent not going up, is this going to be something that's going to go viral? So what they did is they reached out to 20 mayors. Now they reached out to Democratic mayors, not Republican ones, because I'm sure they're expecting the Republican mayors to say hell no. But they reached out to Democratic mayors and cities known for progressive housing policies. And interestingly, this is what was fascinating. Not one of the 20 mayors they reached out to said they would back a Zohran Mamdani style rent freeze. Now that's interesting because these are progressive Democratic mayors. That's interesting. So why? They've been talking about, well, we need to help, people with the rent costs and the cost of living. And so then why wouldn't they stabilize the rent? Is it because it's not practical? Is it because the fallout and the unintended consequences is going to be an absolute mess? There's a reason. So experts think that maybe elected officials don't see a path where they could do it. They think their constituents are concerned about high rising costs, but to do rent control could be very sticky and very ugly. So David Schleicher, Yale Law School professor of property and urban law, says that Mamdani was kind of uniquely positioned to be able to freeze rent because New York already had a rent stabilization process in place, meaning rent increases over covered units were already subject to a legal limit. So there was already a legal framework. The mayor appoints the members to the city's rent guidelines board. They decide the allowable rent hikes each year. The setup enabled Mamdani to celebrate a rent freeze, the policy that prohibits increases for stabilized units just 6 months into his term. But in other cities, you would have to start with the city council. You would have to also overcome any current bans on local regulation of rent. And there could also be lawsuits of people purchasing property, getting into contracts, getting into business deals, and then something like this happens, and then there's the legal logistics. So even though many individuals, many renters would support control over landlords raising rent, we're being told that it's really difficult for a mayor to do that if they don't already have the rent stabilization in place. Apparently in Boston, Mayor Michelle Wu also did not respond to Money.com's request to ask about this. And apparently she supported a Massachusetts ballot initiative to overturn the statewide ban and cap rent at 5%, or the inflation rate, whichever would be lower. And it would have also given Boston the ability to implement rent control. But in June, the Massachusetts Supreme Court removed the question from the November 26 ballot, finding that a religious facilities exemption violated the state constitution. It was a setback for affordable housing advocates, they said, but they're going to attempt again in 2028. So even though there are many states where rent control is not banned, Schleicher says that it's very unlikely that any city would be able to follow, because that's very rent freezing is just still too much of a hot topic. And so it's interesting because I was watching on Fox News, there was an interview, I think, with Martha McCallum and one of the Democratic Socialists talking about how landlords getting a 12% return on their building, or getting a 12% profit, how they shouldn't be able to, that should be banned. And then she asked, well, how much should be then allowed? What percentage of profit then should be allowed? And he couldn't answer that. And so I don't own an apartment building. I did own a house once because I thought my father was going to have cancer and I knew my parents were going to need a place to live. So I bought a house and I put a tenant in there. And at the rent, there was no way for us to make a profit on the rent with the costs of the house, the property taxes, because we didn't buy the house dirt cheap. I mean, we bought the house, but there's costs to it. There's upkeep, there's taxes, and then the taxes you make on the rent. And so we were at first making about $50 to $100 a month, which was by no means a triple digit. That was maybe a 1% profit. And then we started to lose $50 to $100 a month on it. So we sold the house. And actually what we did is we actually moved a family member in there sooner than we expected to, because we were losing money anyway. And we chose not to get any more, not to do that. I'm sure other people, if they're able to get a steal and then really hike up the rent, they could make more money. But if we did get that, early on, that extra $100, that got eaten up fast. When we needed to get an electrician out there, when we needed to check the lighting, when we needed to, and so, 12% is nice. I mean, I don't know who's getting that. And if they are getting that, good for them. But that's not the norm. And when you have somebody there was just a landlord who was just killed because one of his tenants who was living there for years wasn't paying rent. And when he approached him on it, he got attacked and killed. I mean, it's not easy. It's not an easy job. And I'm not saying we need to feel sorry for apartment owners, but if you don't have that little cushion, then what happens when there does need to be repairs? What happens now, even though Mamdani and New York is going to make sure that nobody can be a slumlord or not do the repairs or listen to the needs of the tenants. But if there's no money, it's not getting done. Or that landlord is getting rid of the building. Are they going to be able to sell a rent stabilized building? Probably not. People don't like that. And again, a rent stabilization isn't horrible if everything else is stabilized. If you tell that rent stabilized property that, listen, your property taxes will not go up. They're going to stay the same. Your power bill will not go up. Your water bill will not go up. Your sanitation costs will not go up. Your wood and paint and electrical wiring won't go up. It's doable. But if you're only freezing the rent, the income coming in, and you're not freezing the expenses, it won't happen. And it's not going to work. And so I think there's a lot of people that do own properties, whether they're houses or whether they're small complexes. And we're not talking about big corporations. We're talking about also, regular, small business owners. And if it's not going to be lucrative, they're not going to do it. And so New York stabilizing rent might be nice temporarily for some of their tenants, but in the long run, they're not going to get the help they need, and they're not going to get the upgrades they need. They're not going to get the fancier air conditioning. They're going to get because the money's not coming in. So, it looks like some of these, socialist type movements won't spread like wildfire among other Democrats or other progressives, because if it's not practical, now you might have people where they don't care. They're like, well, I don't care. I'm just going to promise, and then at least I'll be in power long enough. But what's happening in New York, it's a experiment, and people are seeing if socialism could work in a city like New York, and they don't want to fail in their city. And it's not going to work long term. It won't. 1-877-Doc-Dolly. Don't go away.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
Diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regeneration. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
The dust has settled from the World Cup ending. It's been a couple weeks now. Great World Cup. I was fascinated by it, watching the games in Seattle and Houston and LA and Kansas City and Mexico City and Toronto. It was a lot of fun. But now the conversation is, was it worth it? What did the businesses think? Did businesses make money or lose money? We're hearing it was pretty mixed. Now, we heard FIFA made money. Apparently, the World Cup was one of the largest commercial events in history. $15.2 billion in revenue. A lot of sports brands capitalized on it. Multinational sponsors. But I don't really care about the big guys, the broadcasters and all that. I care about the little guys, right? The small businesses, the local pubs. So interestingly, we're being told that it was kind of uneven. Some places really raked in the money. And it really depended on the game. It depended on if there was all Netherlands or, like Netherlands, I think they always were orange. The Argentina, they were wearing blue. And so it's kind of interesting what ended up happening with some of the locals and some of the other fans. We're hearing on the whole that even though many hotels did well, a lot of hotels and lodging fell behind the initial forecasts. So they thought they were going to rake it in, and instead they found that the high ticket prices and the aggressive FIFA block booking of rooms kind of contributed to softer than expected tourist numbers outside of the match days. So the match days were big, but around the match days kind of hurt. Same thing with restaurants and peripheral retailers. They saw lower than expected customer volumes. They say in Seattle's Chinatown International District, local businesses actually experienced a drop in regular foot traffic, forcing advocates to demand city assistance. And then many of the local restaurants and cafes staffed up. They spent money. They prepped for significantly larger crowds. They bought more food. They bought more alcohol. But when they didn't need to sell all that, or they didn't have the business or the traffic, they got screwed. So even though, as a whole, it looks like it was very, very lucrative, you're having a much different, shall we say, take or outlook on it from local business. So other things that they found was, and Vegas kind of struggles with this as well, because I live in Las Vegas, where locals like to go to certain places. But as soon as we hear there's a big event or a fight or a game on the Strip, you'll hear locals go, oh, no, avoid the Strip this weekend. Why? Well, it's a McGregor fight. Or there's a Golden Knights game. Or even though a lot of us will want to go to the fight or want to go to but locals are like, what's going on? And if we hear there's going to be a bit, you could be stuck for hours in traffic. And so a lot of locals that might be visiting these places in Houston, in Seattle, when you hear, well, World Cup, they're going to be like, I'm not going there. And so your local regular traffic, which is something that local business sometimes has to think about. This is what really hurt with the lockdown. You start getting a clientele. You get somebody who on Fridays always goes to your pub. Now you break that habit. How do you get them back? One thing businesses don't like is you learning how to live without them. And one thing the World Cup did is it taught a lot of locals how to live without their routine thing if they're avoiding traffic. Another concern that some bar owners told me is it's great when you're packed and it looks like you're packed. But the problem is if those packed people aren't spending any more money on alcohol. If they're just sitting there watching the game for 2-3 hours, you're losing money. You're not getting those turnover of tables. It's interesting. I waited tables at a couple different restaurants. And some of my friends who waited tables at breakfast places were saying they actually made more tips. I'm like, how are you making more tips if you're not serving alcohol and serving, the price tab? It's because the turnover. By the time your one table leaves, we've already served 2 or 3 with breakfast. So we get more tips, the volume. I'm like, So just because you're packed with people watching the 3-hour game going into overtime and penalty kicks, are people buying more beer or are they buying more food? No, they're just sitting watching the game. And I think it was Mexico versus Ecuador. I forget which teams were playing when I was in New York. If you see all yellow shirts and you're for the other team, you're not going to go into that team. If it's Spain versus Argentina or Spain versus France, or I forget the lineup, you're you see you're not going to want to go to a pub that doesn't have your shirt. And so people are walking by. They're walking by. So I found that kind of fascinating because I'm a big fan of sports, but this isn't anything new. The Olympics, we hear this all the time, that the cities that host the Olympics question if it was worth it. You would think, what? You're getting all this publicity. People are, you're getting to have angles of your city like the Rio de Janeiro. Oh my gosh, watching the Rio de Janeiro Olympics was amazing. It was gorgeous. I'm like, I need to see this. Look at all the green. This is Rio de Janeiro, amazing. But then with Zika going on and people, starting to report there's dead bodies in the water and things like that, they also got bad publicity. I still want to see Rio de Janeiro, but people in Rio de Janeiro are going, well, wait a second, it wasn't worth it. Getting those few weeks of tourism, was it worth the millions upon millions of dollars to spend revamping everything? We find out that a lot of these Olympic villages become ghost towns where they can't really use the stadium or they can't use a lot of what was built for the Olympics. So the city has to host and the city has to spend the money building it. And they're hoping that they get the money back from the tourism and the tourism post-Olympics. But we hear time and time again that so many host cities were like, I don't know if it was worth it. In the long run, I think they still do. Like, I think Tokyo is going to want to host again. Paris is going to want to host again. Italy always wants to host. I mean, I think in the long run they will. But local businesses are like, this kind of sucked. We didn't get, F1. I live in Southern Nevada. And when F1 came, local businesses were like, whoa. This kind of hurt. Because there were other vendors selling food. And then the prices were spiking up. And so people thought, well, then they were going to also overcharge. So it's fascinating to see how that goes. I mean, I'm a big fan of sports and we were talking about how many restaurants were worried that people wouldn't tip because foreigners don't tip like Americans do. Americans, our tip culture is the other way where you get asked to tip going into an office supply store. I mean, you're always asked to tip. Whereas foreigners are like, no, we paid for the meal. It's the job of the employer to pay the staff. But we're very pro gratuity sort of country now, although gratuity is supposed to be the graciousness of you. It's not supposed to be mandated, and people feel now mandated to tip. I want to tip, but I want people to think it's because I'm being gracious. But now it's mandated. I tip whatever. I tip because I was in food service. I waited tables. I appreciate the tip, so I want to give tips. But restaurants were kind of concerned about that, how their staff wouldn't want to work those days because they'd work harder for no tips. So a lot of the employers like, we'll pay you more. We'll make sure, we'll raise the prices. We'll make sure that you get that money. And it sounds like some of the business owners are kind of like, maybe this wasn't worth it. So now they got to kind of work to get their locals back after the 3-4 weeks of World Cup, how to get people used to coming back. So interesting. It will be interesting to see what happens in LA with the Olympics. But right now I'm seeing ridiculous prices. And if I try to go to a hotel and I see that the hotel is pricey, I'm not going to try to go to the hotel again, even if it's non-Olympics. And so hotels are now trying to figure out, what do we do? So we preserve the long-term customers. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit, and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799 and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
So this I like. Welcome back to Dr. Dolly Show, 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. I am a fan of this, the Patriot Games. We're not talking about the movie from the 90s with Harrison Ford, which was really, really good, by the way. I think it came out in 92. I like the whole Jack Ryan series, even the more recent Jack Ryan series. But that's a different Patriot Games. This is a national competition that's going to stream on the ESPN app, and according to Freedom 250 website, culminate with a primetime special on ABC during the nation's 250th celebration. This is assuming ABC and these other stations are going to, stream this. They don't really seem to like to cover what Trump does. But this is a national competition celebrating the next generation. According to the Freedom 250 site, America's next generation of leaders, competitors, and champions are going to take center stage August 9th to the 11th at the 2026 Patriot Games. It's a national athletic competition celebrating the character, determination, and excellence that define the American spirit. I think that's really, really cool. They say Freedom 250 announced that the 2026 Patriot Games will bring together outstanding young Americans from across the nation to compete, inspire, and showcase the values that have shaped the United States for nearly 250 years. What's the prize? The competition is going to award a $250,000 scholarship prize pool to one male and one female champion, creating life-changing opportunities for young Americans while inspiring millions across the country. Now, the coverage is supposed to stream on ESPN app, and then there's going to be an ABC special on August 13th. They say as America approaches its 250th birthday, the 2026 Patriot Games will bring together outstanding high school athletes ages 14 to 17, representing America's great states and territories, alongside athletes from tribal nations, for a showcase of determination, teamwork, resilience, and hometown pride. See, I think that's cool. It's almost like our own little mini Olympics. Athletes will begin arriving on August 7th and August 8th. The competition will take place August 9th to the 11th. The event will feature a series of athletic challenges designed to test strength, endurance, agility, teamwork, and perseverance, while highlighting the values that have helped shape generations of Americans. The 2026 Patriot Games, they say, are part of a broader series of signature events taking place across the country as Americans are coming together to celebrate our birthday, the 250th birthday, and inspire the next generation to help write the next chapter of the American story. I think this is cool. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be critics of Trump, complaining about this, but I loved competitions. I loved field day in school. I loved science fair competitions. I loved competitions. And for me, it's not that I'm overly competitive. In medical school, I was not competitive. When I heard everybody competes in medical school, I'm like, we're all going to become doctors. I'm not looking for a very coveted cardiovascular surgery seat. Listen, we all have to work together. It's a long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So I wasn't ever considered very competitive. But in school, I really wanted the blue ribbon. Did I get the blue ribbon? Sometimes not. I remember getting 10th place, an honorable mention, right, on one of my field day events. But for me, the competition made me work harder. It's interesting. I was watching a Modern Family, and I forget the middle child. There's Haley, there's Luke, and then I forget what the middle child. And the middle child, it was the Brainiac. And she would compete with this guy, Sanjay, from another family, Indian boy. And, Sanjay and she were talking about how, because of that competition they had for valedictorian, it made them better. It's interesting. When athletes compete, they oftentimes have somebody to compete against, or they thank their adversary because their adversary, because they existed, made them work harder. And so for me, I've always thrived on that sort of competition. Like, let's say, for example, you get dumped. And I could do woe is me, and I've been dumped a lot. I could do woe is me and cry, or I could go, I'm going to, be a better version of myself, and I'm going to shine. And that's just, for me, how I would always heal. I don't have to be better than the person I got cheated on with, but I just need to feel like I'm excelling. And so seeing that these Patriot Games are doing this, what's really interesting about this is we already have school sports. We have NCAA. We have SEC. We have sports, and we have college. And we have, high schoolers, have means to compete. There's field days, things like this. But we don't get to see on a national level what talent we have out there. And if a child becomes, shall we say, a role model, or becomes, let's say, a winner from their local school district, and then representing their state, and then representing, it's pretty powerful, not only for that person, but also for the state going, well, look at that. We produce, you get some pride. You get some pride in your school, you get some pride in your state, you get some pride. And it's interesting because, my husband, doesn't really watch a lot of sports. I'm the one that really watches a lot of sports, me and my boys. I got my boys more into sports just because I just love sports. And there'll be a play that a college student or a high school student will do. And I'll pause it and I'll say, you need to see this. And he'll be like, whoa, I didn't think anybody could do that. And I'm like, it could be done. These runs, these baskets, these goals, there's a lot of skill. And I think it should be on a national stage. And we've been over the past decade or two, saying, well, everybody gets awards. Everybody gets this. We want to make everybody feel special. But then you're not seeing as many people do special. And the funny thing is it's not always the jocks that win these competitions. Remember, you got to persevere. You need to try harder. I'm watching the Teddy Roosevelt miniseries. And this is somebody with asthma. This was a child who was sickly. And he's like, I'm going to overcome. He had the Republican Party not like him. He had people want to shoot at him. And he's like, I'm going to overcome. Perseverance is sometimes even more important than strength and knowledge. But saying, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to quit. So yeah, let the Patriot games happen as long as nobody's getting hurt. And let's see what our 14 to 17-year-olds can do. Now, again, a 17-year-old competing against a 14-year-old, they might have definitely an advantage with running and things like that. But let's see the different events. I'm sure we're going to hear more about this. But, and I think this is this the first year? I think this is the first year it's been done. But our celebration of excellence should not always be, well, yeah, that person's privileged. We understand that, you have somebody who's wealthy that could pay for your SAT training. See, I can never afford SAT training courses and things like that. I worked and I took the test. So yeah, there is an advantage rich people have. But with something like this, with athletic abilities and all that, yeah, maybe somebody rich can hire you trainers. But, a 14 to 17-year-old, let's see what these kids could do. Let's see what they want to do. That competitive drive is a part of our human instinct. It's a part of our evolution. And it's what makes us survive. And so good for Freedom 250 and Trump doing this. Obviously, as we get closer, we'll talk more about that. But looking at high school athletes and seeing what they could do and tribal nation athletes, this is going to be pretty cool. Not to mention the teamwork, resilience. I've always said, I think kids, even though we got to protect them in sports from injuries, I think all kids should be on a sport and a part of a team because you really, really learn a lot and you really learn how to work together and overcome your differences. It's very, very rewarding. All right, 1-877 Dr. Ollie. Don't go away.
Can you believe, with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA-1. That's 800-JBS-USA-1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800-JBS-USA-1 today.